All right. Good evening, everybody. Please just show a little bit more excitement. Good evening, everybody. All right. I am really hoping and believing that you're really expectant tonight, because this evening is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very powerful. As you know, we've been on a journey from the beginning of November up until now, talking about taking new territories, right? And so we had phenomenal speakers. We've explored different angles, all right, about taking new territories, both in business and both in our careers. So this evening we're going to make it, take it a notch higher and make it extremely practical, all right? And this is a lot more focused on people in careers, okay? But I am sure that everybody's going to learn something from it. So the way we're going to run tonight is this. We have a panel of 3 people, all right, who, by the way, and interesting enough, okay, are all members of the Elevation Church. All right, so we're bringing 3 people who've had different trajectories in their careers and in business and the things that they have done. Some of them have run businesses. So one of them has been strictly a career person, okay? And so why we are speaking to them tonight and what we hope to be able to learn from them is the fact that these are people who have who have worked in multiple industries, okay, done multiple things in the lines of their career, okay. I'm going to read their profiles in a bit so you will understand what I'm talking about, all right. And we realize that when you are on that trajectory, all right, you know, when you look backwards and you connect the dot backwards, sometimes when things have gone very well for you, you look like a clever person. Meanwhile, while you are in the moment driving your career and making decisions, sometimes all that you have done is you're just taking advantage of opportunities that have come. Sometimes you aren't even sure where those opportunities that you are taking advantage of will land you, all right? But you have done something. You have either followed God, you have followed the opportunities, you've gone through some certain thought process, all right, to be able to do what you have done, okay? So that is what we're x-raying tonight, all right? Because we know that there are people at different stages and phases of life and career. There are people who have certain jobs who would like to go ahead and do something else. There are people who have certain industries who would like to go into other industries. There are people who are in jobs right now but have side businesses, things you would call side hustles, right? Who are considering taking those things to another level and making them the primary source of livelihood, all right? And so our panelists have done a range of those things, and so those are the things that have attracted us to them and are making us to ask them to come this evening, you know, to share their experiences so that all of us can learn from them. And the format is very simple, okay? I'm going to introduce them and bring them on stage, ask them some pre-prepared questions, and then in the course of the service, you will then be able to ask them your own questions, all right? So the way we're going to roll with that is that you're going to write down your questions, pass them on to the ushers. They will go to the back and screen them and post those questions on the screen for our panelists to answer, all right? So the benefit of this tonight is that we're all going to be learning from each other. I really do want you to please open your minds, all right? Pay attention to the things that are going to be said. I believe that every single person in the room tonight will be able to learn one thing or the other, all right, things that we can practice from tomorrow morning, actually, or even maybe from tonight, all right, something you need to do, an email you need to send, a decision you need to make, and I just believe that we will have different kinds of testimonies, all right, coming out of this place this evening, and then we would wrap up the service this evening with a prayer session, just sort of praying and trusting God to lead us into new areas in our careers and lead us into new waves and just give us directions about taking new territories. So remember, we're talking about taking new territories, doing new things, doing bigger things, doing things that help us to maximize and optimize the opportunities that are around us, all right? So please pay attention tonight. Make sure that you ask all the questions that you have on your mind. Learn something significant, and please do take action, all right? So we have 3 panelists, like I said. 2 of them are here, 1 person is in transit. She will be here maybe like another 10 minutes. And when she comes, we'll bring her on the stage to join the rest, okay? I'm going to bring up our first panelist tonight. He is Mr. Tumbosun Ajibola, all right? Up until a couple of months ago, he was a member of the Elevation Church Highland Center in Elevate 200. Right now, he's now gone to the mainland church, all right? So he's a serial entrepreneur and a certified risk and project manager. He has a background in computer science and a master's degree from Manchester Business School, United Kingdom. He sits on the board of 3 companies, including Men's Kitchen, all right? He's worked in the banking sector, he's worked in consulting, he's worked in oil and gas, all right? And he's done several PPP projects in both Lagos and Ogun State. Currently, he runs Men's Kitchen, a leading industrial catering company with several sector-leading firms as clients, along with his wife, right? When I bring him up and begin to interview him, you'll find out that he has a very, very interesting story that I believe all of us will learn something. So can we please put our hands together tonight and make welcome Mr. Tumbosun Ajibola. Thank you very much, sir. Just take a seat there. All right, our next panelist is Mr. Jide Odusholu. He is a lawyer and he has experience in banking in the oil and gas industry. He's run his own property development company. Right now, he serves in the public sector as a special advisor to the governor of Ogun State, and is also the CEO of Ogun State Property Investment Company. All right, so he's served as the group CEO of Legacy Holdings Limited, his own company. He's served as the founder and CEO of Legacy Realties Limited. He's done contracts, served as a contracts coordinator in an oil and gas firm, Texaco Overseas Petroleum Unlimited. And of course, he started out his career in banking. Again, like I said, he's a member of the Elevation Church. Can you put your hands together tonight for Mr. Jide Odusholu? All right, so he said to me just before he came up, so if you just sit here, so we'll leave a seat in the middle for the lady. All right, so he said to me just before he came up, so you can appreciate how committed our people are. So he's literally driven from Abeokuta straight to church tonight to be able to be here. So I'd like for you to please appreciate that commitment and investment of time. Okay, in absentia, I'm going to introduce our third panelist, and then when she joins us, we'll bring her up. So our third panelist is Mrs. Omokunbi Adeoti. All right, she's one of our leaders in church. Right now, she serves as the head of human resources for one of the leading insurance companies in Nigeria. She's a passionate HR professional, a firm believer in excellence, and has shown this in the course of her career spanning over 20 years, from consulting to banking to insurance and telecommunication industries. She has particular interest in general human resources, organizational development, learning and effectiveness, and change management. All right? I don't know whether to tell you to put your hands together or wait for her to come before you put your hands together. But at some point when she does come, I'd like you to do the same thing and put your hands together for her when she comes, okay? So I'm going to start with the 2 gentlemen that we have with us right now, and then we will take it forward from there, all right? Okay, so I know that there are a few people sitting in the audience this evening who are wondering what your stories are and why we have asked you to come tonight to talk to them. All right, so I have the benefit of knowing what their stories are, and I'm just going to be asking you specific questions about those things before we get to the point where we throw the questions to the audience. All right, so Mr. Ajibola, when I heard your story about how you have a background in IT, all right, you have a master's degree in that as well. You've worked in different ways in consulting, and now you're technically a cook, right? Can you just tell us a little bit about that story, how you got into where you are right now and what you're doing?
Okay, good evening, church, and thank you for having me here. Thank you, Pastor and Mrs. My name is Tuboso. I used to be here, so Well, I'm now in the mainland church, so I bring greetings from Pastor Debo. You know.
Thank you.
Okay. Like you said, I have a background in computer science. I used to be a programmer, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, that's what I used to do. I used to be a project manager along that line. My journey running one of my present businesses is a funny one. 2015, August, thereabout, I made a meal for my wife one morning to take to work. And
did you hear that? So say it again, please. Just say it again. You did what?
I made a meal for my wife to take to work so as she could get that as lunch. And she called me in the afternoon and said, "Oh, my colleagues didn't allow me to eat the food. They ate the food, said it was nice." Okay, so I was like, "Sorry," and was like that. The next day, the same thing happened the next day, and so I said, "Okay, why not let's make extra and you sell to them?" You know, so we made 2 packs, and she sold to our colleagues for 2,000 naira. And I felt, okay, the next day we did 13 packs, and we did 13,000 naira. You know, mind you, I was working, I had a 7 to 9 job. She was also a financial analyst in the company, so it wasn't as if we were not busy. In fact, she worked on the island, so the commutes and everything. And after that 13,000 naira sales, we felt, okay, maybe there's something we could do. And that's how the business started. We started small, right from the kitchen. You know, 2015, August, last year we did sales in 8 figures. You know, I don't want to mention.
So 8 figures is between, just so if you don't understand, 8 figures will be between 10 million naira and 99 million naira. Okay.
Closer to 99 million, actually.
All right. Okay.
And the funny thing is we did all of this bootstrapping right from our home. Wow. Yeah. That was how we started. It was just this year that we, started scaling up, started, putting structures in place to get a new location and stuff like that. And the business is huge. There are a lot of opportunities. We every week, we have new clients we're talking to who want our services. And that's how the business started, long and short.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, if you want to clap, please put your hands together. Now, I do like your story, okay? And then we'll come back to come and interrogate that a bit more. Now, one thing I didn't mention about Mr. Otusholu is the fact that is very passionate about entrepreneurial development, okay? A couple of times he has pulled me aside in church and said, look, we need to sort of set up something where something that helps people to do business, and I'll say, okay, I'm coming, I'm writing the plan. Sometimes the plan materializes, sometimes it did not materialize, but he's just very passionate about entrepreneurship. So, but you started out your career, all right, in banking. You studied law, you went into banking, then moved on to oil and gas, and then went on to start your own company, and then you went into government. And looking back over the number of years that you have done that, it looks like a very interesting story. But when you were making those decisions, right, were you very clear in your mind that this is where you will end up?
Good evening. Just like my brother here, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be sharing the story with everyone. Good evening, Pastor Bola. How are you? Let's put it this way. I never set out to be in public sector. Let's start with that one. So if you had asked me 5 years ago, do you see yourself in government, I probably would have laughed in your face. I was one of those guys that used to critique government. I do business and lambast government, never planned to find myself in it. But what has basically happened is a case of one's talent finding him out, and there being a gap, and I was called upon to fill it. But to go back to the beginning of the story, I'd always dreamed of being 2 things. One was a lawyer, and the second was I always had a passion for building. I mean, even when it didn't make any sense. I mean, from when I was a young child, how some kids would want to get cars, some want to get horses. All I wanted were Lego sets. And what I would do is I could sit down for hours and just be dreaming of building things from them. And so when my career was going to start out, I started as a lawyer because I was passionate about being a lawyer then. And within a very short time, the minute I got called to the bar, I put on my wig and gown and went for a trial, and I realized that law, as it's practiced in Nigeria, wasn't really for me. Because instead of
listening... You're welcome, Mr. Sadioti. Can you please put on a together for her?
Because instead of following the trial, I was busy reading a book. And the principal partner called me after and said, "What do you think you're doing?" The judge was looking at you and like, that was boring. And that was the last time I entered the courtroom. And but because I was inquisitive, I was then placed in charge of some of our solicitors' practice work. And I used to handle some of those briefs. And I enjoyed it, but I kind of preferred to be given room to work rather than being given instructions. So I was called a stubborn young lawyer. And I realized that I probably wasn't going to go very far very quickly in a stereotyped law firm environment. So I tried to opt out. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't cut out for law. And I got a job in banking purely by accident. I mean, somebody knew I just left the law firm, knew that the bank was looking for a lawyer. I was a fresh wig, and said, "Why don't you come and work in the bank?" And I joined the bank, and the day I decided I wasn't going to stay was my first interview with the MD. Because he was sitting, I would never forget it, he was sitting at his desk and he was busy writing notes, and I walked in and I said, "Good morning, sir." I said, "Yeah, good morning. You're the new lawyer." And he wasn't looking at me, he was just writing. And he said, "Okay, well, you know, after your probation, I might not keep you in the legal department, I might push you to marketing." Those are the days when everybody was in marketing. And at that point I just said, "Sorry, sir, can I ask a question?" And that was the first time he looked at me. I goes, "Question?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What's the question?" I said, "What if I decide I don't want to stay after probation?" And the man dropped his pen and looked at me and said, "You will stay, there's nothing out there." And I felt offended. And I made up my mind that I was going to leave as soon as I learned enough in the bank. And after about a year, I knew I'd learned everything I needed to learn about banking. And made up my mind that banking wasn't also for me. I still didn't know where I was going next. So I tried to leave the bank. By then, my dad was sure I was crazy. And he had gotten my uncles and they started praying and saying, "There's something wrong with this boy." Nobody lives and back in those days, there were not jobs like that. So you don't leave a good law firm, no job. Leave a bank, no job. My brother was a top banker, and all his friends all were like, "What's wrong with you?" And I said I was going to go and work in church because I didn't know what I was going to do yet. My dad lost it. But then I went off on a mission from my church, then redeemed. We were setting up some parishes in East Africa. I went there, and for 6 months I was just doing God's work. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just was praying and doing God's work. And I came back, and I was having a meeting with one of my friends, and he went, "Oh, there's a company that's looking for a lawyer, but this one I say you don't want to be a lawyer." I was like, "Let's go for the interview." And that's how I ended up in the oil and gas sector. And as good as it was, I learned a lot, grew. One thing happened to me in the process. We had a cooperative society, and what everybody used to just do then was dump money inside it. Nobody was taking anything out. And I said to my colleagues, "You know what, why are we just putting money in this pot? Why don't we start investing?" And they go, "Well, since you have such ideas, you go and lead the investment." So we started doing investments, and after a while we said, "Okay, you know what, we're so many, we earn well, but we don't earn enough to go and build houses on our own." This was in year 2000. And in 1999, I said, "Let's build an estate." So we went to look for land. But around that time, my company was merging with Chevron. And I jokingly said to my colleagues, I said, "Look, if these guys make a mistake of paying me the equivalent of 2 years salary, that I don't have to work, I'm going to leave." And they're like, "Are you mad? Why are you going to leave?" I was like, "Because I've looked at my trajectory. Where I was going, in 10 years, I'll probably be a GM. Then after GM, what next?" It meant I'll be GM by the time I was late 30s. And they would now start passing me from department to department, making me advisor today, manager tomorrow. And I said, I don't want that life. So, cut a long story short, they did the package, and lo and behold, after paying all my debts, I would walk away with 2 years salary exactly. So one should be careful what he says actually. So I took the package, and my colleagues came to me and said, "Oh, we hear you're leaving." I said, "Yes." "If you leave, who's going to do the estate?" I said, "Oh, you guys will do it now." Still, they said, "No, if you're not staying, we're not doing the estate." And the deal was going to fall apart. And all I had, this is the first time I'm actually telling anybody this, I'd never admitted it. All I had in 2000 was 4.5 million naira. The transaction was a 30 million naira transaction.
Okay.
And my colleagues were pulling out. And I went to the lady who owned the land and I said, you know what? My colleagues are pulling out, but I'm interested in doing this deal. She looked at me and she started laughing. I was like, young man, what do you mean you're going to do this? I said, look, listen, trust me, I'll do it. And I gave her all the money I had. It was crazy, it was madness, but I gave her all the money I had, and that's how we started. And that's how we built the very first estate we did in 2001. And what happened was, a lot of people who heard that we're doing it, put their money in and supported it. And that's how we grew the business. And that's how we kept on growing, by building goodwill. So people basically put money in it, and we kept on growing. And that's how we grew our company, did the first project, did the second project, until that became our business.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Sadius, I'm going to come back to you. Just let me give you 1 more minute to catch your breath. All right, so back to you, Mr. Ajibola. Just so that everybody knows. So this business opportunity that you didn't plan for, it was a side hustle. Started from some greedy people sharing your wife's lunch, all right? Has now become something that both you and your wife have left your former day jobs to come and run, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to tell my wife about this when I get home. So, okay, so my question for you is this. Again, similar to Mr. Odusolu, looking back 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? How does this align with the plans that you had for your career? So we're talking about taking new territories. At what point did you think, oh, this is a new territory I need to jump into?
Well, it was extremely emergent. I never thought about it. 2010, yeah, I left the banking industry, went for 2009 actually, left the banking industry, went for a master's degree, and I came back and I was put in marketing. And I told them, no, this wasn't for me, so I left. Sorry about the marketing thing. I just didn't see myself trying to look for deposits and stuff like that. So I left. I went back to my course of study. I worked as an IT consultant. I was doing fine, and then I left to work as a PM for the oil and gas company. So I was doing very fine. In fact, 2013, I actually was put in charge of the project to birth a new company where I was working. So we started out fresh. We're building a subsidiary. And for me, I think that was a turning point because I was given the mandate. My MD just called me and said, we need to do this. You need to figure it out. I was a single employee. So I was doing financial models. I was doing recruiting. I was looking for funds. I was doing
things you hadn't done
things
before.
I had not done before. But he just felt you need to get it done. We need to be able to be. We need to be lean. And those are the things that have stood me in good stead now because I understood that building a business is not just I have an idea, I have this money, and then you just blow whatever startup you have, in funds. So we did that for a while, 2013, 2016, when I eventually first left the company. But it was my moment of, I can build a business. I made mistakes, no doubt, but I had someone to handhold me in a way. So when this opportunity came up and we started the food thing, it was a bit easy because I could just, put things into perspective. Maybe scale down what I was doing. I could easily do a financial model for the business. I could do feasibility plans for the model. I was confident enough to walk up to companies to pitch them. I never saw myself doing food. In fact, till now, my dad still cannot wrap his head around it. That, I don't even look like someone that can cook, funny enough. But that's what I do for a living now, and it's been awesome. It's been awesome.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I hope that we've started turning in our questions, all right, for our panelists. And I do hope also that everybody has heard one thing or the other, from the stories that we've heard. I think a couple of things that I thought to point out is how, number one, so we've always taught and been taught to make plans and follow your plans and have strategies and all of those things, right? But you've also seen how people have paid attention to the opportunities that were around them that didn't exactly fit into the plans that they had for themselves, all right? And so, first point is don't be stuck on the plans that you have, all right? Always review and take advantage of the opportunities around you. And then the second thing is you saw how both of them said, look, this marketing thing, if they throw me to a place that is not aligned with my passion, I am not going to go ahead and do it. So again, paying attention enough to understand how you are wired and what you can do and what you can do very well and staying in that direction. Okay, so Mrs. Adeoti, I read your profile before you came and we did clap for you in absentia. All right, so now the thing is, you've done basically the same thing, human resources, but across different industries, right? And in making all of those moves for you, taking new territories from banking to consulting to insurance and to telecommunications, what has sort of led to those moves for you? What in the course of your 20 years of working, how did you decide now it's time to leave banking and go into insurance, now it's time to leave telecommunications and go into consulting?
That's a dumb question. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Okay, so my coming into consulting first and foremost was a function of my dad's, he's late now, Shola Kibongbe. When he left Securities and Exchange Commission, and then I used to love what he was doing at the time. In fact, my project, because I did economics when I left school, was on Esusu at the time, so I sort of wanted to do finance. And during my NYC, I actually started my CIBN professional track, interestingly enough. However, like I said, when he retired, he started consulting. He needed help as a startup, and that was how I started off with him. And after a while, of course, I was going to get a proper experience in the workplace. The first, I had maybe a few stints here and there before I got into telecoms. And in telecoms, I didn't even immediately start off with HR. I started off with customer service. But interestingly, I always had this passion to teach. I always had this passion to solve people problems. Gradually, then we now had a people development. Eventually, that was within customer service. It was a mini HR group that we had because we had call center training, and then we were merged with the larger HR group. That sort of gave me the wings that I required. But prior to that, the people in the business had noticed that, I had this flair, as it were. So it's nothing but passion for people, passion to see people succeed, be that bridge to make organization work. So in telco, and I did straight 10 years then, so I went through all the changes with Econet, all the way till it became Airtel. How did I know? I think the first thing for me was I self-learn a lot. I had one or two bosses who were very supportive. So the person you work with actually makes a difference. They saw value, and they always wanted to push me. I had a very particular crazy one, and a number of people may know him. He's in fact a Muslim, Jubril Sabah. Jubril was, honestly, I used to just tell him, you have dual personality, you have a problem. There were all the forms of projects that could come under the sun. You know, he would pick a few people, and incidentally, some of those crazy projects would always land on my lap. Having been through so many changes, I just wanted a different environment. I knew I was going somewhere. One thing I had always said to myself was also, for you, Omokumbi, would love to be a school of thought. I knew that. But the only way to also make that happen was to experience various industries. So while I had like an idea, the path wasn't exactly laid out that way. So I went into another telco, had some bit of experience, but then I started asking questions, and then I had one or two friends that we do hard talk, serious hard talk. And those questions were, okay, so you've done this. How are you sure that you actually even know what you're doing? Are you tested? And one of the things that can test that is your ability to move. So when the opportunity for banking came, people thought, girl, you're crazy. People don't just go to bank after telco, after consulting. Well, I said, I can't talk the banking language or the finance language if I don't experience it. And then, of course, the fact that I had now done CIBN that I abandoned years back, I now had to come back to it. So I went into banking. And then after a while, I had conversations. Like I said, I have some friends. And thanks to one of them, Enife Atoboloyi, there was a conversation I had with her about 2-3 years back. So we just sat down and we were talking. I said, Kumbi, what do you want? I said, one thing I know is I want to be a school of thought. And if I'm going to be a school of thought, a force to reckon with in my field, then I must experience every field. So she said, what is the next step? Now you've done banking. I said, well, I want to do FMCG, or insurance wasn't even in my focus. I wanted FMCG, I wanted, well, so I called it then manufacturing, as it were. However, the opportunities that came my way at the time were, I had that, and maybe yes, I prayed, maybe one evaluated the entire process, and here I am today. So.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go over to the questions, but before we go to that, I'm going to ask one last question. And I'm going to ask maybe two people to answer it for me. So this afternoon at about 1 o'clock, I had a meeting in my office with a young lady who is doing very well in her career, all right? Getting into very senior levels, almost sort of like director levels, yeah? And she's having to make a decision about to go higher. She's currently in a city, and the business is saying, the organization is saying to her, for you to go higher, the business in the city where you live with your family cannot support you. We need to move you out, all right, because we see that you have the capacity. And so she's torn between pursuing this opportunity, pursuing this great career, and managing her family and leaving her family and all of that, you know. And she looked me in the eyes and said, look, I would love to do this thing. My husband is not exactly asking me to not go ahead, but I have concerns about my children and my family life, you know. Brojide, if this was your wife, what would you say? Then we'll come to you, Mrs. Adeoti, if you, what should I tell this young lady when I see her again, maybe tomorrow or next week?
If it was my wife being asked if I should do it, based on what she's going through right now, she'll tell me no way. But if it was me being asked if my wife was in that position, I wouldn't stand in her way. And interestingly enough, today I was just reading an interview by this lady that runs PepsiCo in Illinois. And they were asking how she was able to put it together to be a very successful executive and have a family. And she was honest. She made it clear that, look, it wasn't just about her, it was her husband. That the husband consciously said to her, look, you know what, you're better at what you do than I could possibly be. So I'm going to be the one to take care of the home. You go out and excel. And I happen to be one of those men that I don't see a problem if my wife has a skill that is unique to let her go out and flourish. But because of the peculiarities of Nigeria, any woman who is going to take that decision needs to have a heart-to-heart conversation with her husband and be ready for the fact that at some point in time the man will make a demand that because I've allowed you to do this, so you have to compensate. That's me being plain about it.
All right. Okay. So, Mr. Zadet.
Go, 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 go.
All right. Go. Okay.
You want me to say more?
Yeah, exactly. So this home beat, this challenge that she has about how she's going to juggle this, I mean, family in some part of the country, she's in Lagos, having to fly all over the place, travel all the time, how do you manage all of those things? I mean, she has young children. She says maybe by the time I go home in 3 months' time, they may not remember who I am. How do I?
Okay, so maybe this is a good time to also say thank you to Kayode Adeoti wherever you are. And I believe he's watching. And I know you know, on a number of, in the last 6-7 weeks, I've been oops. You really need a support structure. A fantastic support structure. I have a fantastic man that supports my career. That's why I'm able to get this far that I've gone. Yes, the first thing is to have a conversation with your husband. You need to be clear on the terms of the contract. That's one. 2, in the conversation, you need to also understand that your man is still in charge. Yeah? And you need to present to him how the support structures are going to work such that your family still stands high up entirely within that contract space. Most of the contracts like this are what you call short-time assignments or long-time assignments. They are off the space of the country. Oftentimes, contracts like this, they cater entirely for your family. There are return tickets for your family to come with you. There are even opportunities for you to move the children, because what the organization typically does is to settle those kids in school. If your husband chooses to come along with you, a permit will be worked out for him. And if he's not coming, then you need to now schedule how those visits would run. It doesn't mean that you are going to leave your family entirely behind, but there's need for a conversation to understand that process, and you specifically creating bonding time along that journey for your family. That is critical. You cannot trade on that.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go to the questions from the audience. Mr. Jibola, first question is for you. The person says, Mr. Jibola, your cooking story sounds interesting. Kindly share your challenges, if any.
Okay, I like the fact that the person said sounds interesting. Yeah, it is interesting, but it's been a difficult journey. Bearing in mind the fact that when we started, I was still in paid employment. So a typical day, I'll leave home at 7, get back home like 9, and I have to call someone to deliver all the things I was going to use to prepare the meals for the next day. And then I'll be up till 12 prepping, go to bed around 12, then wake up like 3 to make the meals so that it can then be delivered to the island. You know, at some point I started asking myself, okay, why are you doing this? I had a good job. I didn't need to, but it was just interesting. It was the passion. It was the fact that I was watching something grow, because it kept expanding. So after a while, we started having different complaints. We had people calling to place their orders. The previous day, I was able to employ one person, and it started growing from there. Now challenges, at some point, I had to weigh my priorities. And at some point, I had to leave my 9-to-5 job because I was beginning to have conflict of interest. So that was a major challenge, when to leave. I finally left this year. It wasn't an easy one, but I had to leave. So I don't know if the challenges are about the transition or the business challenges. Actually,
I think the business is more like
business, more like it. Okay, it's a business that is less than 2 years old. One of the major challenges I've faced was actually losing one of our first huge contracts. And we had a contract that was turning over 5-6 million in a month. And one day we just got a call, you guys, due to ABCD reasons, we were going to terminate your contract. At that point, I had not learned the way to go about handling contracts. You need to manage people. People have expectations. I didn't know about that. I was just a regular, I do my meals, I do my provided service and stuff like that. It was also partly our fault because we had no structure. We grew too fast. We grew too big. We're not ready. So imagine having to handle a 70 million naira a year contract from your home. My house was in the state for like 1 year. You have people cooking everywhere. There was no privacy, nothing. Those were sacrifices we had to make. And so we lost the contract basically because we're not ready. We had no support structure, delivery at times. Because we're bootstrapping as well, I couldn't afford a lot of, fancy things like, a nice bus and the rest. I used my vehicle for close to a year to make deliveries. It was just the fact that we were not ready for that growth. For me, that was a major lesson last year. Growth can kill. If it comes too fast, it can kill your business, and so we had to then contract to manage the existing clients and not just take on, opportunities here and there, let's take them and then mess up the brand. So that was a major challenge for last year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question says, I'm currently an IT staff in a multinational, but I am more passionate about human resources. How do I go about the transition? So, Mr. Reese, I'm going to park this at your doorstep.
Okay. Interestingly, there's the field that is growing now that demands a lot in terms of IT, and that's HRIS. We have HR Analytics and Metrics. So you need somebody who is really, really techie, who is IT savvy in that space. It's going big. And AI is also moving into HR space heavily. So one of the few things that you can first of all do is, one, there are professional examinations that you may need to register to start even learning stuff about HR. In Nigeria, we have CIPM. Globally, we have the SHRM, and we have CIPD. SHRM is more in terms of spread. CIPD is restricted to UK, but start with CIPM. It's big, it's huge. You would have a whole lot of support. That's one. Secondly, in your organization, walk up to your HR team. If it's a multinational, you have an HR business partner. You can go ahead and have, because most multinationals as it is today, they use the HRBP model. So have a conversation with your HR business partner, first of all, a career conversation. Then find the HRBP would let you know the projects that are available within the HR space. Begin to volunteer in that space. Also outside of your organization, do the same. The real thing is this: when people want to hire, they don't necessarily hire, you are hiring for experience. So whether you volunteered, it's still an experience that you have gained. So then you can then have proof to say that, look, I have done this before. Then you may have friends who are SMEs, and who need to start doing some bit of automation in HR space. That allows you to understand the employee life cycle and building systems to support it. And once you do that, gradually you find out that things begin to come up your way. Get yourself on social media, put out those things that you are doing along those lines. And you can be sure at some point someone is going to notice, and that your experience is going to be called for.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so this IT person wants to become HR, right? So we have a unit in church called Volunteer Management Unit. We're recruiting people into that unit. You can sign up to join that unit at the end of service. That's like our HR unit for managing the workforce. So you can go there, you would learn a lot of stuff. In fact, you meet Stakumbi there as well. Yeah? Okay. This next question says, Mr. Odusholu, were you married during your transitions? If yes, how did you manage your wife? So when you were doing those things that your
maybe I should get on the phone and call her. It's tough. It's quite tough. I think the most important thing really is for your spouse to know who you are and to know what motivates you. It will not relieve the pressure, but it creates a base for understanding. Now, I was fortunate enough that we were dating before I started making my job moves. So she already knew the kind of person I was, that if I work in a place and I don't have a good vibe with my boss or I don't enjoy what I'm doing there, I'd rather sit at home than go to work. So she already knew that. And so the prayers she used to pray, there was that God, give me a good boss and let him enjoy the place before he starts. So we do have struggles, especially since I went to public sector. It's much worse than anything we've ever experienced before. We do have our challenges. It is tough for the family, and you cannot deny that fact. But one thing that helps is honest communication and conversation. It won't remove the friction, but you have to have a conversation about it regularly. And then you, the person that's making the transition, that's creating the problem in quotes, you have to be ready to take the whipping that comes with it. So you have to be the one that's ready to bend over backwards. Because my wife makes demand on me at times, just because she feels you've been gone for the last how many months. Now, yeah, so this weekend is you that has to do this, or you have to, and I have to do it. So that you just have to balance it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so next question says, I work with a sole entrepreneur, and I also have my home business. It's been difficult juggling both. How do I go about this? Do you want to say something?
You just have to prioritize. People talk about time management. I talk about priority management. You know you need to do both. You then have to spend the best time doing the best thing at that particular time. If you, obviously, a regular job, maybe 8 to 6 or something, then you have some hours after work to do other things. For when I was still working, I tried a lot not to do, my personal stuff during work hours until, arose a lot of conflicts. So if someone coming from one of my locations, they have issues, I'm in a meeting, instantly I get scattered because I then have to try and manage whatever is going on there and also try and present a proper mean at work. And at that point, I realized I then need to either get someone who is skilled enough to do all those things or exit. So my take is the fact that you need to spend your time judiciously. A lot of us spend weekends. You have your weekends. Few people go to work weekends, but if you don't go to work weekends, spend your weekends on your own business. Evenings, early in the mornings, do the things you need to do on your business, and then spend the time you're being paid for to do what you're being paid for. At some point, there'll be a conflict, and I think that's the point where you need to examine, will this business pay my bills? At some point, I realized, okay, this business can pay my bills at that point, and I felt, it was easier making that decision to then leave. If it wasn't going to pay my bills, I wasn't ready to leave. So I think that's what you need to think about.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so the next question is for you. It says, how do you handle disappointment when starting out in real estate?
Well, the thing about real estate is there are three, I was thinking about a question. There are three major things you need. more than anything else, more than money, more than land. One is integrity. When I started out, I told you that the first project I was doing was a minimum value of 35 million. I did not have 35 million. All I had was 4 million. And a wife that was willing to trust her crazy husband to go and spend all that money on the project. But one thing that happened was, because I had a reputation in a circle in the oil industry, when I started that project, people were literally paying money into my personal account. They would call me and say, oh, is it you that are doing this project? I say, yes. Okay, where is it located? I tell them. They don't go to site, and they pay money to my account. After the first time, I was like, oh, thank you, God. Second time, I said, God, there's a problem here. If this doesn't go right, all these people, they're paying money to GD, not to a project. And I called and said, look, you know what? I trust you, and I believe that you will not run away with my money. And despite all the challenges I've had in the business, that's one thing I always try and protect. When I give you my word, I'd rather not make money than fail to keep my word. Because that's one of the problems people have with real estate. You tell somebody you're building a story building for them with X finish, they give them a carcass and you tell them, hey, but you know now, the money can't cover. You can't do that. You won't last in the business. That's the first thing. Second thing is discipline. The problem with real estate is that you get a lot of money coming in, and you can easily forget that it's not your money. You see, you have to build that house, put infrastructure, put security, put everything in place. So the fact that somebody paid you 10 million naira for a house, and you are already going to buy a car, when you have not even paid for the land, you're going to end up in jail. So that's the second thing, discipline. The third thing is you've got to be bold and courageous. The real estate business is one that it can be exciting when it booms. It can be very lonely when it fails. I've had a project I did that, let me call a number of figures because it's really a lot of figures. And I had to return a lot of money to people because the project didn't work. And when I was returning the money, I was selling personal assets to return money. And my lawyer called me and said, wait, it's a company now, what's your problem? Just, the project has died. Walk away. And I was tempted to. And I kept asking myself, yes, it's a company, but they bought into me. So I had to actually deprive myself and pay back that money. And I did it with the confidence that, look, it's seed time and harvest time. So I'm going through a rough patch. When it rebounds, I'll be ahead of the curve. And that was what worked, because by the time the market started rebounding, a lot of my colleagues who packed up and ran away, the banks took over their assets, the owners were there. My estates are still there. People may not like me all the time, but the estates are there, people are living there. So those are the three things you need to work on. Are you going to get disappointed? Yes, you will. Because it is going to have its downtime and its uptime. But if you try to go into real estate business and you can manage that integrity challenge, because it's a big challenge, you will excel.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so just remember we're talking about taking new territories, right? Mrs. Adeoti, one of the things that people want to do a lot in looking for new territories in their careers is getting additional degrees, taking time off work to go to school, or acquiring multiple certifications and things like that, right? If someone is thinking about making those sort of decisions, right? What should they be looking out for before making a decision to leave a very good job and go to UK or wherever, and then come back for 12 months and then continue to come and do things? I know you've tried that, Mr. Jibola, so I'm going to come back to you, but let's hear from Mr. Adeoti first.
I wish I actually had a flip chart.
That's how you know to just. I'm sorry, we don't have one tonight.
So there are three things when you're within any career at all. First is you have a dream. Second is you have various skills that you probably have, and the last is those things that you are just naturally passionate about. Now, if you put those three in a Venn diagram. If you recall a Venn diagram, yeah, there's an intersection in that space. The intersection of all three, yeah, is your sweet spot, is the positioning of success. Okay? And in that intersection, by the time you list it, look, there are certain skills. So for example, I can sit down and I can make hair. I make my daughter's hair. Okay? Is it something that I'm necessarily passionate about? No. But if push comes to shove and I need to use that skill, I always joke that if I go to London today, I will become hairdresser, tax-free. Do you understand? So that's a skill on one side. And the dream is, what future can you see? Yeah? And if you're able to map that future, what you're passionate about, if I speak to you in 5-10 minutes, I will be able to speak the things that drives you, that you probably you're not even aware of. So if I put the intersection of those three, so if you want to go and get a certificate, the first thing, or get a degree, is I would ask you, where is the alignment of what you are going to get within this sweet spot? There's no point getting what is not useful in the direction that you are going to go. Okay? And in this environment, we have a lot of certificates. I have loads of them. But it's also important that the certificate you're getting, do you have the experience to back it up? It's the experience that takes you through journey, the ups and the downs, and then allows you and starts to shape the decisions that you make. So I will say yes, but please be mindful of this. I just try to paint the picture. If there's no alignment in the future that you are going into, then what's the point of spending that amount of money? You need to review your resource and focus it on that sweet spot.
All right, thank you. All right, so Mr. Ajibala.
Same thing like she said. For me, it's a function of long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. Most times we take the short-term approach, immediate, what course is in vogue now, or what certification is in vogue, I'm going to do that. And then you do it a year down the line, you find out you don't really like it. When I left to do my master's degree, it was a tough one. It wasn't as I was doing 3-4 jobs, and I was going to school, and it wasn't like it was rosy. But I knew I needed to get this towards a particular end, and that was what kept me going. So it wasn't as if it was just because I'm trying to think of something that is in vogue now. Maybe everybody likes social media now, social media marketing, blah blah blah. It has to be something you have a long-term use for. Otherwise, it's just money better spent, invested in yourself or in the business.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have one more question here. I'm going to pass this to Ms. Odeshodo. It says, is there a particular act to networking? I struggle to sell my business.
Okay, I look at it two ways. One part of networking is being able to talk to people. Some people have a gift. You can just talk to anybody. The second part is being able to close. I'm sure we all know people who can talk from now on till Jesus comes and you don't say anything. Now, closing is the act of knowing what you are trying to get from somebody and being able to stay on focus. Now, if you're going to network, then the question you have to ask yourself, what am I really selling? I'll use the example of a taxi driver and a Uber. What does Uber sell? Uber is in the business of transport, but they're selling convenience. So for Uber, networking is ensuring that their app is on every phone, wherever it can get network. Because what they sell is the convenience that you can use the touch of a button and get a taxi. But the normal taxi driver is selling transportation. He has to go and park at a junction somewhere and pray that you come and meet him. So what are you selling? What are you trying to sell? Who are you trying to sell it to? Where can you find those people? Listen, if you're trying to sell a skill or a service, you can't do it sitting in your room. And you can't do it sitting in church praying. Prayer is good. Sitting down to have time to think is good. But you've got to go out there. You've got to go out there, find out where the people that you're trying to market or what you're trying to sell to are, where you can find them. Be in their face, because opportunity comes to everybody, but it's only the person that's prepared that gets to take advantage of it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, sir. Last question, and I'm going to have all three of you say something about this. Please do make it brief. We have just about 3 minutes left. Now, so we're talking about taking new territories, making career transitions, and doing new things, right? And we've heard all these very wonderful things that has happened to all of you and the things that God has helped you to acquire. Now, where is the role of, I know we're in a church, and this is almost sort of like cliche, but where is the role of your faith in addition to all these calculations and taking advantage of opportunities? Where is the role of, how did your faith and your individual relationships with God help you to navigate all of those journeys, knowing what to do and what not to do? Who wants to go first? Okay, I think let's just do from my right-hand side down to Bridget.
We can't do without God. That's a fact. There is only so much we can think about. There is only so much we can plan. I've had instances where I needed to go. In fact, we were the last person to probably get notice of a bid. And I'll get there, and I'll go there on a Saturday. Maybe the bid is on a Monday morning, and I'll spend the whole of Saturday evening praying, walking around, and speaking in tongues. And then I'll go home and tell my wife it's settled. And she would laugh, and we'll get the job. It's happened twice. Now, it's not to say we don't do our own bid. We make our bids as fantastic as possible. But I am a strong proponent of the fact that there's a God that rules in the affairs of men. Yeah, I totally believe in that. So we cannot discount that. Yeah. And all our experiences somehow revolve around, okay, when I was in the UK, I worked in KFC. You know, one of the jobs I did was something that introduced me to the food business. It was just a means to survive then. But then looking back, it was something that prepared me for what I'm doing right now. So most of our experiences are not in isolation. They come together. All right,
thank you very much. Mr. Dude.
Okay, God is the beginning, God is the end, it's God all the way. So, in every step of the way, it's important what you say to yourself and who you believe your personality is in your walk with God. As you say it, so shall it be unto you. That's the truth. So you need to have a positive mind, taking the concept of the word, digesting it, and walking in that path. I typically joke, I always say that my life is patterned out like that of Joseph. And for Joseph had an idea because he had a dream. He knew what the end was, but was not sure of the path. So every experience I've had along my path, those experiences, some of them are extremely painful. Some leave you wondering, how did I get here? So it's not all these magic sweet things. So those experiences send me back talking to God, where I receive the courage to continue on the journey. However, just like he said, every bit of the experiences I've had, today I'm coming to use them. It was because those experiences, I need them for the future that is ahead. So you really need to be in contact with God. You just need your antenna. You know how your signals, they just must work, no downtime.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with what everybody has said, and the only other thing I would add is, for me, I need God most so that when things are going right, my head stays screwed on right. I don't get carried away. Because it's easy when things are going wrong for me to remember there's God. It's when everything is smooth sailing and I've just closed that new project somewhere and everybody's hailing me and my head is swelling big. That's when I need God, because I need to be reminded that, but for him, I am nothing. Because success, the Bible says that it causes to rain on the just and on the unjust. It's not because I'm extra special. It creates opportunity for everybody. But because I choose to be connected to him, when I take advantage of those opportunities, I tend to blow faster and do better than somebody who doesn't have God would.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so we've come to the end of this session. Thank you for coming. Please go back to seats. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, ma'am. Can we put your hands together for them tonight? Okay, so I hope that wasn't just polite applause. I hope that was indicative of the fact that we all learned something, all right, that we're going to do.